Well, he is one of the best attorneys in Baton Rouge. Well, heck, in all of the USA. He is a regular on Court TV, as well as various other news outlets. He's awesome on Talk 107.3 with Brian Haldane. He visits churches. He's great on Twitter. He is the fantastic Franz Borghardt. Alongside, as always, a TRD podcast Hall of Famer, the pride of Atlanta, also tearing it up on Court TV, CNN, ATL News One, and a million other places. You know him as one of the smartest people in show business. You know him for being amazing on social media. You know him as the incredible Band-Aid ripping Josh Schiffer.
Now love me. Don't just know
Not
me. Love
alone today. Last and certainly not least, America's FBI agent has not only participated in several high-profile arrest operations and led nationally recognized investigations into organized crime. She hosts one of the best podcasts in the land, Break the Case. She brings brilliance and style whilst striking fear into those who break the law. She's been an expert witness in over 200 cases. She is the one who knocks. She is the great Jennifer Coffindaffer. How's everyone doing today?
Woohoo! I'm more excited than anybody. Like I'm telling you, again, Jennifer, man, that's a pretty good scoop for you there, Mr. Derek.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Jen. You guys don't need me. You can just sit here. And...
Yeah, so you're just going to
just smile and nod
side now, right? So, Jen, let's talk about all the good. No, we have a lot to talk about, and I know that Derek's going to probably try to interrupt us with some questions, but we're all really here to talk about what's going on in trials. This might be one of the busiest, exciting trial weeks in recent memory. I mean, we've got Karen Reed's case, which we're all fascinated by for all the right and unfortunately wrong reasons. We've got the Menendez trial. They're doing jury selection today again. We've got Trump with the Cohen cross-examination that is happening right now. Or sorry, still some direct. We're not at cross yet. YSL is kicking down the street from me. Daybell, they got into some of the photographs, and it's just horrific. And I'd love to know kind of your impact and some thoughts from you on the impact of these really egregious photographs and what the fairness is and how you see them as being some of the best tools for the state to use. But man, we just have a ton.
Okay, well, I have to do a little bit of housekeeping first because we haven't gone on in 2 or 3 weeks with us, and I told you guys we get bombarded with questions, so I just want to clear some of this out. But I'm going to get to everything you talked about. But first of all, we had to give a shout out to New Jersey because our last episode with me, Josh, and Franz, incredible numbers in New Jersey, blew every other place out of town. After that, it was Virginia, California, a lot in South Carolina. So shout out to them. One of the, it wasn't a question. Kayla G wrote on Facebook, I love Josh Schiffer. One of our first listeners, Johnny in Pittsburgh, wanted to ask, what is Jennifer's favorite fast food restaurant?
That's a very important question.
Oh my gosh, fast food. Okay, I'm going to be honest. I'm not a fast fooder because I love to cook. But if I had to say something, Chick Fil-A, I like that hot, spicy sandwich and the diet lemonade. It's really good.
That was Josh's favorite.
You have excellent taste in fast. It's just such a high quality fast food. Like, it's fast food, so you're not hitting any home runs for that.
I got to tell you,
Chick-fil-A's are always so well run. Like, they're really a superior fast food restaurant.
It's fast food only in description only, because any place that you can go and sit and one of the employees comes up and says, "Can I get you a refill of your drink?" I'm not equipped to handle that at a fast food restaurant.
I'm sorry.
That's next level.
What did you say?
Yeah.
How about their lines, their drive-through? Like, they are so efficient. They have 5 people working that drive-through line. I mean, they're working 10 cars back. They got it all figured out. They've got all these little machines going. They're amazing.
I was just going to say the same thing.
They need to take over the post office. We need to take the post office and sell that concession to Chick-fil-A. There's no way that's a loser for us. It must improve because, Chick-fil-A's logistics management, par excellence. That's just glorious when you see a whole bunch of hot, sweaty teens in uniforms being polite to people in cars. It's amazing.
Well, Hot Sweaty Teens is so far the front runner for the name of the podcast.
New ringtone from Derek.
A question for Franz from Sarah in Connecticut. But last time we were talking, you were mentioning some of the cases about billing and invoicing. Uh, Sarah wanted to ask you, how much do you think that this trial is going to cost YSL roughly by the time it's all said and done?
Oh,
Hmm.
oh, hemorrhaging money. It's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot. Um, oh, Josh, I mean, tell me if I'm off base here. Quarter to a half?
So, with the number of co-defendants and their various financial positions, different lawyers are being compensated very differently. Brian Steele and Keith Adams, who are Young Thugs Prime, the two big man, they're big shot private lawyers, great practices. They're in the millions.
Okay.
For a multi-year shut down your practice, you're spending a couple of mil right there. On the other end of that, there are a couple people that are public defenders. And if you remember, I was briefly brought into the case on a pay issue in my work for different agencies because the public defenders very rightfully were advocating for more pay because they just were going to get creamed. And already, I believe it's the highest paid non-death public defense case in Georgia history.
So to answer that question that wasn't asked, every once in a blue moon, I will take a case either because it's interesting to me or because there is a certain amount of notoriety. And I'll take that case at a potentially on a co-defendant at a potentially lower fee so I can play in the case. And that may be because I want to work with some of the attorneys that are on the case. Like, hey, Josh is representing one of the co-defendants. I've never had a case with Josh before. I think that would be a lot of fun to watch him kind of maneuver and all that. The older I get, the less I do that because it can be a time suck. And that case is a practice. I call it a practice slayer. So you're going to have to make enough money on that to keep your other practice, the rest of your practice viably alive and not alienate your existing clients. But that's going to be an expensive price tag.
Which is funny because, like you said, if you get involved with the trial, so like afterwards, if you get a good outcome, you're like, okay, we got YSL, blah, blah, blah. And then they're like, Franz, Puff Daddy's on the phone. He wants to talk to you.
I do like Diddy.
One more question for Jen. This one was interesting since we were talking about money. This one came from Lara. I don't have the location. Do you know how the amount of FBI reward money is tabulated?
Interesting. I don't know because what basically happens, I think what she's saying is how it's tabulated per case. But let me just say there's a pool of money that can be used for these rewards. And what you do is you write up why your case should get money. And you send that in, it's approved by headquarters, and you're given a certain amount of money. So basically, somebody at headquarters has that decision on their shoulders, but it's writing on your write-up. So the better the write-up, the more the money.
Really?
That's
Yeah, you
fascinating.
don't want to go in there and just, put down a few words. You need to show why this case deserves it.
It's amazing.
So do the families like say my Franz's relative is kidnapped and he's made trillions and trillions of dollars representing these terrible crooks. Can Franz like buffer that a little bit? Like, hey, Fed's gonna kick in $25,000 for whatever the Safe Streets program. Can Franz be like, hey, I want to pony up another 50, or it's just the government says no, stay out of this?
Yeah, stay out of it. I mean, it's strictly, and remember the kinds of cases that get these rewards, a lot of missing people, fugitives, things like that. So it's very, very specific.
Yeah, and a lot of those kidnapping cases, what the public doesn't understand are the different levels at play. There's a lot of unfortunate just fraud, trauma, real tragic rug pulling that goes on in some of these cases. So everybody's a suspect until they've been eliminated, unfortunately.
Well, and I think we talked about that it was a long time ago that there, for any, again, Jen would know more for like a criminal, syndicate, where if you're offering a $5,000 or a $7,000 or a $10,000 reward, okay, that's okay. But, if you're really trying to flip somebody from the inside, I would imagine it has to be probably in the 150,000 plus area.
Well, really, when you're talking about rewards, the reason rewards happen is because the case is going cold. And that's typically the time that you're going to see rewards, at least in the two kinds of cases that I mentioned. And that's because they want to reinvigorate leads. And so for that reason, rewards are offered. And that's also the reason why often they don't announce rewards early in an investigation, because then you have all these people spilling in leads that are really not good ones just because of the money.
All right, one more, and then we'll get to some of the current stuff. But this was a long one. This is what I was telling you guys about. It was a hoot. So her name is Janelle from New Jersey. She said, I've listened to your last 4 podcast episodes. My daughter Lexi is 14, and she absolutely loves Franz. She almost died a few weeks ago. Not died. She almost died laughing a few weeks ago when Franz yelled out, "Just pay your fucking child support," because I'm sure she's heard her father and I have that same argument. She's going into her 2nd year of high school, and she was wondering if she wants to be a lawyer, is there anything in particular she should be focused on?
Mental health evaluation.
It's not too late. Turn around. Dental school. Take biology and math.
So the question let me say this. I love doing what I do for a living, and I suspect the other 2 guests love doing what they did in their respected areas of the criminal justice system. That being said, whenever I'm asked to talk to someone's kid or family member about going to law school, I try to dispel any disillusions. A lot of people think that being a lawyer is like the show Suits or like the show, Boston Legal. And the reality is it's not. And I try to figure out what they're really trying to get at. Like if you want to be if someone tells me I want to be a civil rights attorney and fight and change and this, that, and the other, I'm like, okay, well, let me tell you the reality of that. If they tell me, hey, I'm boring and I just want to do transactional work and make good money doing lots of billable hours at a big firm, I'm like, okay, well, here's the probability of you getting the grades that you need to get there. I don't dislike being a lawyer, and I would certainly advocate for if they have a passion for it. But I think the biggest advice I have is get some real world experience in a law firm. Go be a runner. Go work at Josh's firm, answering phones or doing something to where you can see. You can separate the reality from the fiction, because those are 2 different, like, yes, the idea of being a lawyer, like on the show Suits, is sexy, but that's not real. And a lot of the stuff I do is very mundane and very boring and necessary. And so that's my 2 cents.
It's like people that want to be a doctor because they love Grey's Anatomy. They also had a follow-up question, Lexi, for Jen. She said she's done 2 tough mutters, one with her mother and one with her aunt. And she was wondering if FBI training is like that, and how long is it?
So FBI training is about 4 months. And the reason I say about is because with every class, believe it or not, it changes. Sometimes it's 7 weeks, 19 weeks, 18 weeks. As an example, I went there in November 18th was what they call my EOD. And I had every holiday. I mean, I had Veterans Day, I had, Christmas, New Year's, all that. So my time there was full on extended with lots of holidays in the gerbil cage. Essentially it varies. But in terms of the physical, what's expected, when I went through, it was before all the lawsuits. There was a badge lawsuit, which was by Black individuals. And then there was a woman lawsuit by woman individuals. And all of that really watered down what we used to have to do. We used to have to do pull-ups, push-ups, run that half mile, run that sprint. We did what we call the yellow brick road, which if you've watched Silence of the Lambs, that's the real deal. That's what it looked like. We had to do these obstacle courses, but a lot of people got hurt on them. They really have watered it down. Yes, you're going to have to work out every day. Yes, you're going to go on long runs, but it's not going to be the mutters like it used to be.
So in other words, Jen is saying that this candy-ass generation ruined FBI training.
So Jen,
Yes,
so honest follow-up question for Jen. Because I'm very much when I was in law school, I had to walk 5 miles in the snow to school and
I
fight.
rode a bike
kind of
uphill
guy.
with no pedals.
So I sense that it is easier to become an FBI agent than it used to be, still difficult.
Okay, the academy process is easier, physically speaking,
Okay.
but the process of getting in is still just as hard,
Okay.
if not harder.
Okay.
So not easier.
I know
sure.
the selectivity is still extraordinarily high. This is not waltz on in. I've got a number of friends and colleagues that have pursued high-end federal law enforcement work, and it really is cream of the crop stuff. If you're not ready to compete at the highest levels, there's no way you're making it very far.
So when I was in law school, my school, LSU Law School, they had just gotten away with failing out a third of all admitted students. It was they would let in a group of students and statistically they'd fail out a third.
Money.
Yeah.
Now it's if you can get in, similar to the FBI, if you can get in and you can get in, you're probably going to make it through if you try. I'm not saying that's how the FBI is. I'm just saying that's how. And look, I'm in academia now because I teach at the law school. And somebody used the word candy ass. That word also applies to academia as well.
Well, now at the academy, and even back then, so in my class, we had 33, 3 didn't make it. They literally went back to their dorm rooms and their stuff was all there and ready for them to walk out the door. So it's still pretty tough, but they do what they call recycling. Seriously, that's what we call it. And so people who fail either academic, firearms portion, or the physical portion, there's 3 portions. Midway through it, about 8 weeks, you get tested on all of that. If you don't make it, they recycle you, which means they kick you back into a different class behind you. Sometimes that class can be, sometimes you have to go further than 1 or 2 classes. So as a firearms instructor, as an example, that was one of my auxiliary duties. And you have to go back and recertify every couple of years. So when I would go back, I would work with the people who were recycling, trying to help them out with firearms, because a lot of people, it's the firearms is why they get recycled. I think you have one recycle period and then you're out.
What's the sidearm the FBI qualifies on? Is it 1911 or what is it? Is it Glock?
Well, that is very much varied, but right now it's the Glock 9mm, the Glock 17. When I went through, we had the 10mm. Yeah. Oh my God, this gun is so
cannon. It's a cannon.
Why they don't call it the 1 centimeter? I don't know. But this gun, I still have mine. They allowed people who went through, only 3 classes went through with it because it's cannon.
That changed from 9 to 10. It's a lot. Well, because the complaint was the stopping power, and that 10mm. Really, it is a dramatic increase.
It's a hand cannon. It's a hand cannon.
It's awesome. It's great. It's a great handgun.
So there. Follow-up question. If we have time. So in law, often is the case that we make jokes about, hey, A students become like the teachers, B students become the judges, and C students make all the money. That's the national running joke in law school is A students become professors, B students judges, C students make all the money. With this recycle program with the FBI, like if you're not great with a firearm, I'm like, as a citizen, and in the criminal justice system, I'm like, okay, well that's not safe for you and your brothers and sisters that are agents, but like that's not going to dramatically affect your investigative abilities. But let's say you're like a C student FBI agent when it comes to like investigations. I don't know if I want that person being an FBI agent.
Yeah, you know what, Franz? I was just going to jump on that because I was thinking when she said earlier when we were talking about the reward money and stuff, like, can you imagine if you're like, okay, this is out of our league, let's call the FBI, and an agent shows up and he goes, I graduated at the bottom of my class.
Hey, listen, no one ever asks the surgeon what he got in organic chemistry. No one's ever asked me how I did in contracts.
The Bureau does great at policing itself. Let me tell you. First of all, you walked in every morning after a test and you saw everybody exactly how they did. Everybody knew everybody's fit score. We all competed against other classes. So the guys that were, pathetic, they had to stay after, and we as a group got them whipped into shape because we wanted to win. We wanted to be the best.
It's like a few good men.
What's the incentive for top? Like, clearly this is ultra competitive people at the highest levels. I'm certain the top couple positions, that's got to be just absolute brutal combat. What's the reward? Do you get the better pick of assignment? Do you get, is there the prize? What's the motivation?
Oh, there's some rewards. I mean, first of all, there's awards that you get for being the best physically, the best mentally, and so there's one for each of those. You can also be on the Top Gun board, which is if you shot perfectly throughout the whole time you were there. And then there's also, if you had a perfect fit score, there's a special board for that. So those are huge incentives. But practical incentives are, listen, when you go out into the field, they're going to put you on applicants, white collar crime, and maybe you're fine with all of that. But for people who can shoot and run and jump and kind of the full package, you're going to get the opportunities to work the fun stuff, the fugitive task force, the organized crime, the violent crime. I guess I thought that was fun.
I was going to say, is that what's the pecking order of, primo assignments, like when you've got the menu?
Primo are RAs. Those are resident agencies. You're out by yourself, basically, and you work everything from A to Z. So unfortunately, you're the master. What is that thing? You're the master
Jack of all trades.
Yeah, jack of all trades. But that's primo, right? Because you're not at headquarters with all the nonsense. You're just out there with a group of 5 or 6 guys working crime.
You're just a justice squad with a federal agent, and it's got to be kind of awe-inspiring. Be like, we are justice.
Well,
we're walking around
and a 10mm.
Yeah, well, in plain clothes, back in the federal government.
And that's fascinating because, again, if you want that type, or like a few months ago, we talked with Frank Figluzzi, who was, the former assistant director of the FBI. And again, at the top of his class and all that sort of thing. But there was something to that where when you're at the top of your game, he was saying, after September 11th happened, a day or two later, they flew him to Florida to deal with an anthrax outbreak, which it doesn't seem like getting that kind of work. It doesn't seem like, it's something you want unless you do have some sort of passion for law enforcement. So like, again, I don't think people get into the FBI for the money in the beginning because I've heard it's not great, but if you have that fire burning inside of you, which you obviously do, how long do you think, how long did it take you to rise up the ranks?
Well, so as long as you're doing what you're supposed to be doing and you can chronicle, because every time you have what we call file reviews, and those file reviews are serious. It's where you document everything you've done on each of your cases. Now, I happen to have, I think, one of the best he was under Hoover, one of the best Hoover agents anybody could ever have. God bless you, Dick Ludwig. He was the man. And he was the best mentor anyone could have. I had almost 10 years with him. And he was a total hard ass. I could tell you stories of the discipline that I suffered for doing small things. He made sure you were in line. But anyway, yeah, it's a great job. I think I lost track of your question thinking about Ludwig.
Well, let me ask you that. So we've heard a lot about how there's been the changing of the guard at a lot of federal agencies over the last 10 or 15 years. We see demographically ages changing. We all know that federal employees have kind of a faster career than necessarily a pure private sector. What's your personal takeaway from where the agency is at right now, when really law enforcement from 10,000 feet changed dramatically? 20 years ago, you didn't doubt any testimony from an FBI or a CIA agent, and police had this kind of overwhelming trust. That, to me, seems to have backed off a lot and changed with our leadership at the top. and we've seen a lot of criticism. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, just a little bit. So, first of all, there's people who come into the Bureau, and right when they interview us at the very beginning on the classroom, and they ask, why'd you want to come into the FBI? And most people answer, I want to put bad guys in jail. I want to solve crime. I want to do something good. But then you have about 10%, which we all call blue flamers. Do they have that word in the private sector? Well, we call them blue flamers because they got a blue flame right up there, and they came in to be in charge. They didn't come in to put bad guys in jail. So their trajectory, everything they did was trying to move up the ranks.
Yeah.
For other people, for me personally, I wanted to be the best case agent. I wanted to have the biggest cases and make the most impact that way. And you have to have good people that go up the ranks too. But anyway, so back to that. If you look at your street agents out there, they are doing great work. But up at the top, yeah, I'm not happy at all. No.
And it's not just the FBI. I've heard this with multiple I facilitate with a lot of different government agencies, and that's kind of the general malaise feeling right now is that the old gray hairs, we don't have the quality people that we might have had 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. We've had some hiccup in our career development, which is unfortunate because federal government does benefit from institutional knowledge, especially law enforcement. We need that knowledge.
So I'm laughing only because I'm thinking if someone were to ask me, why do you want to be a criminal defense attorney? I'm like, I'm broken and I'm dead inside. Like, is that a black flame? I don't know.
Oh, that's hilarious.
One more question for Jen, and then we'll finish off with that other question, and then we'll get to some of the news. I think I've heard that FBI agents can retire after 20 years of service, but you didn't retire at the earliest chance you got. So was it in particular what you were doing, or you wanted to hang in there for a while longer?
So great question. So if you get in, for me, I got in accepted at the age of, 24. I was only 24 when I got my letter.
Was that 10 years ago?
I love that. Very blessed with that. And so if you are under the age of 50, but have 25 years in, you can retire. Or you have to be 50 and 20 years in. So I was eligible with 20 years I went through the academy when I was 25. My birthday came anyway, long story. 46, I believe, was when I was eligible to retire. That's young, everyone. Like, that's really young. So I held out a couple more years. I loved what I was doing. I was on the director's detail, was one of my very last assignments, basically traveling with him and working his detail. And that was really special to me. I was the first woman ever to be assigned to the FBI's director's detail. And it was special. But unfortunately, I was still assigned overseas. And so I had to, from a monetary standpoint, to be transferred, I had to stay one more year because when you're overseas, you can't retire overseas and monetarily be taken care of in terms of your real estate costs and such. So I stayed on one extra year. So I don't know if that answered that question. There were a lot of factors.
Where were you?
Virgin Islands. Somebody had to take the job.
Hey, so where?
You didn't want to go to Alaska, huh? You were suffering in the Virgin Islands.
I know, it was the best. I just finished.
Were you in Charlotte Amalie, or where were you?
Yeah, Charlotte Amalie in St. Thomas. But I was the SSRA there. So I was in charge of the Virgin Islands, St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John, and then worked in terms of like the legal attaché stuff when it came in for the British Virgin Islands, because it's literally 10 minutes away.
So the FBI field office is on the second floor of the Royal Palms office building right there?
Jennifer Coffindaffer's fighting crime on the beach.
Yeah. Our office is on the first floor. So when the Epstein raid happened, we got calls about like, hey, why is the parking lot full? There's a whole bunch of people here. FBI windbreakers. What's going on? I'm like, I don't know. But yeah, we know that my partner Doug got barred down there several years ago, and we have a lot of fun stories about the Virgin Islands. It's different. It's like a very special part of America. I tell people all the time, it's like a teeny tiny southern town, except it's surrounded by an ocean.
It is. I always said, look out, not in.
Yeah.
You know, because it's so impoverished.
Oh yeah. People don't understand that when it comes to just flat out poverty, when it comes to the most suffering United States citizens, they are United States citizens. And it is as close as to visiting a third world country as any other part of America I've ever been to.
Yeah.
You feel very out of place seeing some of the conditions that these people live in. But fascinating crime down there because, like you're saying, you can swim to the British Virgin Islands. That's the EU. You can very easily smuggle huge amounts of all kinds of contraband between the EU and the United States. It's also one of the interesting things people ask about customs down in the Virgin Islands. And I'm always telling them, you're going to get customed going out and coming in. It doesn't matter. You are going to be under pretty intense scrutiny because no one knows exactly where you're going to stop off next.
And I do want to say, and the lawyers particularly will appreciate this, our RICO, the #1 racketeering and corruption enterprise was the U.S. Virgin Islands Police Department. So we did not have a relationship with the U.S. VIPD. In fact, they were our targets. We did a lot of arrests of them. We took down, when I was there, 48 narcotic traffickers, 48 or 50. I mean, we brought in all these SWAT teams. It was something. They all stayed in Keneal Bay, which is the most expensive, beautiful resort you can stay at. Although
powder white beaches, just tell you the truth, it is heaven. It's paradise, and that's why there's some bad people down there. There's some crookery afoot because it's legitimately those are pirate beaches. We have space over on Cowpit Bay. It's a legitimate pirate beach, and they do pirate stuff down there when everybody's eyes are closed. Speaking about kind of piracy and contraband and all that, what do you think about the introduction and all these new crimes that have kind of developed over the last 5-10 years? Specifically, I'm talking about drones. I'm talking about the different ways of the financial money laundering, the different thefts, all those different new crimes. Do you think the FBI is really prepared to handle this, or are the crooks always going to be moving faster than the agency can?
We're a step behind. We're always a step behind, but we catch up pretty quick. Lots of resources, lots of money, and lots of minds that end up coming in. You know, the Bureau recruits. When crime shifts, the Bureau changes its recruiting processes and who they go after. So for instance, scientific minds, when I left, that was the #1 people recruiting. In other words, they wanted chemists, they wanted physicists, they wanted biologists, they wanted people that were very good academically in those respects. So they change what the recruiting efforts are, depending on crime.
That's going to bring us to the perfect transition to the case everybody wants to talk about, which is this insanity in Canton, Massachusetts, because physical evidence is huge in the Reed case. It is absolutely what the state is staking its theory on. And there's just a couple of questions about the physical evidence, lack thereof, and the investigation.
Okay, so I wanted to go at this from a different angle because I know that I know Jen takes a lot of shit on this, and you know what?
She does. I gotta say, Jen, you take it.
You know what?
And these people.
And Jen, you've seen that I defend you on this because, like, the one thing I love about social media, and I know Josh and Franz would agree with me, is you could pick. You know, like, it's not like 20 years ago when you had to turn on the news and you had to hear whoever the hell was talking or whoever wrote it would feed you information. Where now, you know what? If you're anti-Karen Reed, you can check you out. If you're pro, there's other people that, you know, fight on the other side of it. And you have the option to do that. So I just curious, like, can you just run down the case for us just from the facts from the beginning? And just just like just some people that
I mean,
might not be
I'll
familiar.
do it really quick. Karen Reed, John O'Keefe. John O'Keefe is an officer with the Boston Police Department. They go out with friends. They're partying. They go to a couple of bars. Afterwards, another Boston police officer named Brian Albert, he is hosting kind of a party for his son, Brian Jr., who's in his 20s and he's having a birthday. So there's about 10 or 12 people back at the house. He's out partying with all the adults with Karen Reed and John O'Keefe. He says, "Oh, come back to the house," because, the bars were closing down. So everybody heads back to the house. The prosecution says that when Karen Reed, who was driving her black Lexus, let out John O'Keefe, she then hit him and left him to die in the snow because they got into a huge argument and they were on the rocks anyway. That's the prosecution side. The defense's side is that no, John O'Keefe was let off. John O'Keefe went into the house, and the Boston police officer named Brian Albert, 31-year veteran, ATF agent, multi-decade veteran, and a 17-year-old named Colin Albert and a dog named Chloe brutally and viciously murdered Brian or John O'Keefe and threw him on the front lawn. That's it.
So,
And I will say, his cross-examination by defense I like him as a witness, but he was so flaky. And it
Which
was
one?
What's his name?
Brian Albert, the homeowner, the cop, the 33-year.
Yeah, I like him. So let me say this. I like it, and I know I'm going to get blasted for saying this.
Yeah.
I think she did it, and I think she's going to walk. I like him as a witness, but on cross, I wanted to be like, dude, you've been a witness before. What are you doing? He seemed like he was on another, like, not present, not really listening to the questions, and started kind of, it's hard to describe, but I'm like, oh, stop, just answer his questions, stop playing games. And so I think she did it. I think she's going to walk, and I don't care who I get blasted by.
You're going to get blasted because if you even intimate that you think she's anything but I'm so glad to hear some honesty. You've got to tell me what you think. Defense attorneys here, are they doing a good job? Are they not? Help me out from your perspective.
and I was just going to throw in something quick for Josh, because I know that we've talked about this before too. Her likability, she is not liked by the jury. I can't imagine. And we've talked about that before, how important that is. Do you think, like, let's just say there's a lot of people on one side and there's a lot of people on the other. At the 50-50 rate, if you're turning off the jury, can that tip it to a 60-40 and maybe she gets found guilty?
So yeah, and it's the part of my image. It's the screw you of criminal defense, which is bluntly unfair to the state. I love saying that as a defense attorney. If there's a really polarized issue, that almost always is going to benefit the defense because they don't have to have unanimity. The state really does have to have all of the people agree on at least the 10,000 foot. You can get away with a couple little details here and there, but really they've got to all decide Karen Reed killed John O'Keefe using this pathway of what the state put forward. And it's going to be this running him, hitting taillight theory, which a lot of people have had problems with. The defense has been brilliant in this case. Sure, there's things I might have done differently, but the defense has inflated a empty balloon that was cover-up. And they had just a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And by pushing these witnesses have let down the state left, right, and center. Poor Adam Lally, God, I feel terrible for him because he got this file and was like, damn, officers, could you have made this cop killing worse for me? He's in there without the kind of work that he needs to win a case. Man, this is a cop killing. This should be the best prosecution of the year. Instead, these witnesses are a disaster. They're either over-prepared, under-prepared, or just manipulated. They can't keep honesty coming out of their mouths. They look like they're evading everything. Sorry, I talk about this all day.
But point out something. Since the O.J. Simpson trial, I have not seen a defendant accused of a crime with this kind of fan base.
I 100% agree.
Yeah. Oh, the sideshow is a whole other, and it is so quintessentially Massachusetts. It hurts. And I went to school in Worcester, Massachusetts. I unfortunately knew of a couple of these characters from a couple years ago where they ran into some friends of mine. So I was familiar with these characters. I think that the high-pitched nature of the community engagement is affecting this trial. That's what I find really interesting.
And what I find to be ironic is out of all the people that would have this fan base, you have a white female who projects entitlement. Normally, we call that a Karen.
Her name's Karen.
Irony.
I never see anything like it.
So
right.
And the reason I tend to listen to people like Jen is like in your incredible career, and you've worked some insane cases. Like, I don't want to use the word tunnel vision, but like you look at the facts of this case, the 45-second summation you just broke down. Like, do you just say, you know what, he's guilty, or is it one of those you can kind of see both sides again? Because you've had a career where you can see this case and you can break it down relatively quick.
Well, so in a nutshell, I got 2 DMs. That's how I got started on this case. 2 different DMs, 2 different people. They said, "Hey, will you look at the Karen Reed case?" I get DMs like that all the time. I try to when I can. So one day I had some time and I started reading the court documents. That's what I always do, is I just go to the court documents and start reading. So both sides, you have to read both sides. So I read the prosecution side. I'm like, oh my God, this is pretty cut and dried. Then I read the defense side, and this sounds terrible, I literally thought I was reading a book like The Emperor's New Clothes. When you looked at what they were trying to sell, zero facts. I kept going back and forth and saying, wait a minute, how could they possibly think these marks, when I read the court documents, and the ME specifically says the marks on the arm are caused by a blunt object. There's no animal on the shirt, no animal DNA. They're abrasions. They were very minor in terms of how far how can everybody say they're dog bites? I mean, you had lawyers going on court TV. You had everybody and their dog who know nothing about dog bites, much less examine John O'Keefe saying it. And that's what this case is like to me. So I just look at facts. But this is what I realized. The reason it's gone like wildfire is because everybody is so mad at the Canton and that area of public corruption. And it reminds me of Rodney King, everybody mad about racial issues with OJ, so they acquitted him. And I wonder if that could possibly happen here.
But to champion her as a human being, like, she seems like the least, and look, I have no dog in the hunt. I'm sitting back eating popcorn being like, I like good. And here's the kicker. It's almost like a Broadway musical. I feel like I'm watching Chicago.
It's an opera, man. Come on. These characters are right out of
we're going to write
Italy.
We're going to write Turtle Boy the musical. Let's do it.
Well, Karen looks like she just walked out of Central Casting for a certain archetype that I'm familiar with from the world of finance. Anybody that's spent time in that part of Massachusetts knows how townies are and how that gossip train exists. The idea that these people are claiming not to know all that, it just does not pass any muster at all. And you see them trying to outthink the system in their testimony. It's mind-blowing.
So this goes back to what Josh said, though. If there is a galvanizing issue, OJ, it was civil rights, right? OJ wasn't the hero. It was the combination of the right catalyst of things happening at the same time. if it's all about the public corruption, you have an unlikely person becoming a hero, right? And by the way, it's little microcosmic things. They're in a tight courtroom where the victims are sitting right next to the defense counsel table.
It's mind-blowingly small. Like, if you spend a little bit of time, you're talking about dorm room style courtroom. Like,
So-
it's minuscule.
Think about that. The jury is staring at her, staring at the victim's family in real time, right? Can't avoid it. Can't avoid it. She is the most unlikely lovable human being. Yes, and this is my soapbox, and I'm done. Yes, they're not supposed to look at the media. They're not supposed to look at the media. And the judge admonishes them not to look at the media. They're absolutely looking at the media, guys. And so I think she's going to walk. I think she killed this dude, and I think she's going to walk, and then she'll write a book about it. It'll be great.
Jen, do you think she's going to walk?
I have more pause than I've ever had in a case like this that's so obvious. But I will say, I think that it could be hung. I think it could be hung or possibly found guilty of the most minor charge. Remember, there's 3 charges, right? So leaving the scene where a death resulted, the jury just might decide on something like that, or it might be hung. But this is where I think part 2 is going to happen. And that is the civil suits are going to come rushing in. And I think she'll 100% be found guilty in a civil suit.
Now, Josh, I know that there some going back and forth about whether she was drunk or not. Will that play a role? Because I know that under the influence, it seems like in some of these cases, it's a bit of a free pass.
Yeah, well, and it depends on what's been proved versus not proved, and what's being alleged, and what the standing and purpose of any lawsuit is. You know, right now it's being basically just shown they were out there drinking and they're going to have BACs, but her actual technical level of drunkenness, that's not getting litigated as much in this, because the dispute is what happened from a fundamental sense. You know, did he get out of the car? If so, how? Did she hit him? If so, how? Did he get into the house? If so, how? Who saw what to whom? So that there'll be more exploration in the civil suit, because there'll be different discovery powers. And that's why the civil suit will be so interesting.
So if you prosecute a defense of innocence, if you say, it wasn't me, it was this person, the problem is you lock yourself into that defense versus doing a shotgun effect. And look, to the federal government's credit, generally in a federal trial, which doesn't happen often because the cases are pretty airtight, there's not a lot of wiggle room, right? Like, yeah. So when you lock yourself, the reason they were so reluctant to show the cards of this is who did it was because you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't say it was this person and be locked into that and simultaneously say, well, it could have been these other 2 people as well. That does not work, right? And so I agree 100% with Josh. The alcohol gets downplayed because they've locked themselves into a defense that if they don't buy it, too bad.
And one of the unfortunate parts about this case is it's exploring law enforcement activities during their personal lives. And we like to hold law enforcement to these ridiculous ideas that, you know, if you're a cop, that means you've never broken a law ever in your whole life. And it means that you never drink. No, there are cops that go out and get tore up. There are cop bars. And then some people, of course, over attached to, oh, those are officers and they had 1 drink. So anything that they testified to after that drink, that's of absolutely no value. Come on now, y'all, this is a murder case. It's not quite like that. Now, one of the interesting things that I keep hearing talked about, and we've not seen in the actual Reed case, the discussion about the feds. And there's been some, you know, to my far away belief, if I'm a local federal prosecutor and I see some of the things getting discussed, my ears are at least going to perk up. And who knows exactly how some of these relationships really exist. Jen, do you have any insight on that? Like there are allegations from all of these people about who's getting investigated by whom, none of which I believe are factual. Can you clear that up?
Yeah, let me clear it up really quick. So the federal investigation was started by Karen Reed and the defense attorneys. That finally came out. We finally knew what was the genesis. That was huge to me. They investigated fully. They came out with a statement very recently that said, we've determined no targets. We have no targets. And as the attorneys know here, you can have a grand jury that asks for either a true bill or a no bill can be returned. But a lot of grand juries never reach any conclusion because the prosecutor never asks for that. They're just investigative grand juries. And that's what it would seem we have here. Nobody's been prosecuted for perjury. They didn't do an investigation about who murdered John O'Keefe. They did an investigation on the public corruption angle as to how these officers behaved. So it seems that no charges were levied. Could they come
kind of
later?
The angle that that's basically what I was walking away from, was what I saw when I heard that it was sourced from the defense. You go, all right, when do the feds start listening to defendants? Well, you generally got to throw a cop under the bus somehow and talk about some sort of internal corruption within the investigation. But those investigations, the allegation is made commonly. An actual justification for the investigation, much more rare. So it doesn't surprise me that it was kind of an open and shut from the defense.
And Rollins was the U.S. attorney who made the decision. Rollins and the DA hate each other. And so there was a lot of that political stuff. She ended up getting ousted, got her license pulled. It was ugly. So,
and that's just the general legal landscape up there. If you're local prosecutors, the U.S. Attorney's Office ain't your friend up in Massachusetts. It has a history of corruption that no one can deny.
Now,
I
wanted to throw in a quick two-part question for Jen. If this case wasn't televised, do you think anyone would care?
The worst thing that happened is televising this case.
Yeah, that was my second question.
Here I am in the media, and I've always said, okay, do you remember the case with Caitlin Armstrong, against Caitlin Armstrong? She was the gal who went in and killed Mo Wilson, the famous biker, just recently last year. Anyway, that Texas court said you can watch opening statements and closing statements, and other than that, it's closed down, even though it was very high profile. Well, guess what? Nobody really cared after that. I mean, it fizzled out. So to your point, yeah, it's going to fizzle out, but it's publicized. So,
and do you think that it's because of the particular sideshow people involved, or is that just in general? Are you pro cameras in courts or anti cameras in courts? I'll be out front. I think that the public deserves to see as much of the sausage making as possible.
To be fair, none of us would be on court TV if there wasn't camera in courtrooms.
Yeah, well,
yeah. Yes, but I have to go back to my FBI roots, and this will be very unpopular, but I'm unpopular as it is. I am against cameras in the courtroom. I'm very pro people in the courtroom. I'm pro sketch artists. I'm pro reporters, everybody there. But unfortunately, I think the side circuses that result far outweigh the justice that could be impacted. So I'm a no-go, but no one really, that's not going to change. There are going to be cameras in the courtroom.
You're not unpopular. We love you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You generate an enormous amount of interest. I'll say that. Your name comes up in a conversation and the pile on, I'm glad I'm not in your DMs. They've got to be absolutely nuts. Now, do you think, will you talk a little bit about what's the effect of this sideshow, which we also are seeing to a much lesser extent here in Georgia with YSL, where YSL in certain parts of the community, it's huge. It's daily news. People pay attention to it every single minute of the day. This is giant. Karen Reed in that part of Massachusetts is certainly like that. What's your feeling? Does it actually move the needle with justice itself? Is it invading the province of the jury when you've got the Turtle Boys and the Grant Smith and all these people out there creating a fight for clicks?
It absolutely. I'm going to tell you, I went there for 3 days to visit. I wanted to see all the crime scenes. I wanted to go to where the bars and see where I went and bought a sweatshirt and had a lime in seltzer water. People were snapping pictures. People were chasing me. People were screaming Coffindaffer. I mean, never has anything like that ever happened. I mean, it was something. That is to your point about how and that's both in Denham and in Canton. That is how much in tune all of these people are to this case. They shouldn't be recognizing my face. I mean, I'm not out there that much, but I think it would only happen in this case. And they're crazy.
If Franz and Josh were in
Austin
Boston,
people.
if Franz and Josh were in Boston, the circus would just, I mean,
Let's all go there. Let's all go there.
Well, and this is sorry, this is where I start getting frustrated with the true crime universe, because it does negatively affect the open application, fair application of justice. And not that I know all the details, but when the relatives of a crime victim are having to deal with, basically exploitation by people that are claiming to be in the media or are in the media or get some sort of media or pecuniary benefit from creating a hubbub about who these victims are or aren't. We're getting into some fundamental, do you have a right to privacy and da-da-da-da-da. But it's disappointing to me to see some trauma really happen to some people out there.
So let me say this real fast, and I got to jump off. One of the things that I have seen happen in the last 5 years, at least in my life, is if I win something that's high profile, I will get hate messages, Facebook, social media. I'll get threats. I'll get stuff I never got before. Not from family members, not from victims' family members, but from true crime people that just believe that my guy did it. And I never saw that 5 years ago, never would have gotten that. And it is kind of what's happening now on both sides of the spectrum with the victims, with the defense attorneys. Now, look, sometimes the defense team will put themselves in that position by saying some of the things they say in the media. But if you just get a not guilty today, you're going to get a response from people.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to Boston, so I'd rather be dead in Philadelphia than alive in Boston.
Oh, you're a horrible Canadian.
For more Josh and Franz, maybe you need a lawyer, maybe you need advice, maybe you need someone to tear the Band-Aid off. Please check out Joshua Schiffer at www.jdgrouplaw.com, on Twitter at LawyerSchiff, or just Google Joshua Schiffer. For an extra helping of Franz in Louisiana, visit www.borghardt.lawfirm.com, on Twitter at Borghardt Law, or just use the international network to Google it, or reach out to me and I'll let you know. For more of the 10mm Jennifer Coffindaffer, find her on Twitter at Coffindaffer FBI. Download the podcast, Break the Case, wherever you get your podcast. Book a training opportunity of a lifetime with Jen at www.firearmsbeyondinternational.com, or hire her for speaking or as expert witness at eaglesecuritygroup.com, or just reach out to me and I will hook you up.
You guys were great. This was the funnest podcast I've ever been on.
We barely scratched it, Jen. Normally there's a lot more about what is your favorite hot dog condiment. Are you a mustard only person?
Want to see some of the questions I wasn't able to get to? Guys gonna love this.
Like, we genuinely love doing, like, this is because I think, like, you like this stuff. Like, even if you weren't on TV, you'd still be paying attention.
Gosh, 60 questions. Listen to this. One for Jen. They found aliens at Area 51, Jen. Where are they and why are you hiding them? I had, if you could domesticate any animal, what would it be? I had the thing, if you change your name to Subway Coffindaffer, you get free subs for life. Believe me, the next time we get on, we can go through all that. But I had to get off some of the questions earlier because the only complaint we're getting is you keep saying we're going to get to these questions and we never.
Yeah, no, we and timing is always difficult. I got to jump because I've got a Chenko standing right here
Yes.
with a check.
So,
Jennifer,
Josh,
this
Jen,
was awesome to meet you. I'm a big fan.
You guys-
I love what you're doing out there. I can't wait to. I'm sure I'm going to see when you come through Atlanta. If you're doing a court TV, literally, I live 5 minutes from the studio, and
Oh,
you do
love to get-
scripts as well, and you do news. You're a News Nation, aren't you?
Yeah, News Nation.
Yep,
I'm a
I know a
News Nation.
bunch of the people. They're fantastic. So
I was
was
going to try
really
to
great.
I was going to try to
see you.
get News Nation when I was introducing Jen, but I was like, if you went through all of her stuff, it would take 10 minutes and I'd be out of breath.
You got to pick some highlights.
Yeah, I was picking the highlights.
All right, y'all. I'll
you
talk
all.
to you soon. Thank you guys
Appreciate
so
it.
much.
Listen, you're the
Excited to be
best.
out of here.
Thank you so much.
Bye.